My name is Naomi Russell, 34 years old. By profession, I'm an architect, a creator of spaces where light meets purpose. By instinct, I'm a mother, fiercely protective, endlessly patient, and always running on borrowed energy. My son, Oliver, is 5, curious, imaginative, and so stubborn he could move mountains if he tried. My world spins around him, my boyfriend Steven Garcia, and the unseen pull of family expectations that shadowed me my whole life. I still picture the mornings when Oliver counts the bubbles in his cereal like they're rare gems. I sit beside him, tired but present, reminding myself that these small rituals are what keep me grounded. Stephen, buried in his own storm of project deadlines, sends lighthearted texts about work to make me smile. Small proof that I'm not completely alone in the chaos. But the rest of my family, they live in a different orbit. My sister Claire, the golden child, 30 years old, effortlessly radiant, a social media strategist whose life looks airbrushed into perfection. Mom calls her the star. She moves through the world as though light bends to her will. Beautiful, distant, flawless. And the rest of us? We simply revolve around her. As for me, I've always been the coat rack. The one who arrives early, plans everything, fixes what's broken, and quietly absorbs both the criticism and the expectation that follow. It began subtly. As children, Claire dazzled with her flair for group projects, while I carefully measure flour for baking assignments, hoping someone would notice the precision. Dad would laugh at Claire's creativity and wave off my corrections with that indulgent smile that hurt more than it helped. Mom would glide through the dining room, praising Claire's sense of style before glancing at me with a gentle warning, don't overthink it. And yet I did. Overthinking became second nature. Dependability became my whole identity. I fix the leaky faucet. I cook every meal. I plan the birthdays. I take Oliver to school, all while keeping a quiet mental list of thank yous that never come. The irony is, design and food, the things I love, are honest. They reward effort, not favoritism. But in my family, effort always seemed to land with a dull thud. The first small sting came 4 years ago. Oliver and I went to Claire's for Sunday dinner. I brought chicken soup, simple comfort food, because Oliver had a cold. For a moment, everything felt right. Warm bowls, gentle clinks of spoons, Oliver digging for the biggest carrot like a tiny explorer. Then Mom said, Naomi, next time maybe make something a bit more sophisticated. Claire's friends expect elevated flavors. I froze, spoon midair. This was chicken soup for a sick child. Claire chuckled, her reassurance sounding more like dismissal. Don't be defensive, Naomi. We love your food. Dad added, you just need to practice your plating. People eat with their eyes, you know. Under the table, Oliver's little hand found mine. I smiled, steadying my voice, though the words left a quiet scratch on my heart. From that day, I began keeping count of every favor, every hour, every unacknowledged sacrifice. The requests were small at first. A tray of hors d'oeuvres here, a dessert there, always disguised as opportunities. But the arithmetic of it, the unspoken tally, grew heavy. I paid for ingredients, covered groceries, stayed up long past my own bedtime, and no one noticed. Each gathering, each favor, became another lesson in invisibility. Claire would call with her cheerful precision. Naomi, could you whip up some bite-sized appetizers for my client meeting? Something impressive but inexpensive. Oh, and no onions, garlic, carbs, or dairy. I'd laugh lightly, nod politely, and swallow every unreasonable condition. Stephen noticed, sometimes in silence, sometimes through short texts. Do you really have to do all that? And I'd always reply, it's fine. It's family. But fine carried more weight than anyone realized. I remember nights scrubbing countertops, folding Oliver's socks into neat little fists, tasting the bitterness of my own restraint. That was the spark, the first quiet strike of the match. Not anger, not outrage, just the slow build of quiet injustice, layer upon layer. Then one Tuesday night, when Oliver was with his father, the silence in our apartment felt different. I opened my notebook and began to total it all. Groceries, gas, babysitters, unpaid labor. The number stopped at $486. For the first time, I whispered to myself, enough. The room was still except for the ticking radiator and the echo of resolve. A line had finally been drawn, not out of spite, but for dignity, for boundaries, respect, and the right to exist beyond service. Looking back now, I can trace the warning signs, every subtle request, every disguised demand, every expectation I quietly met. This story was never about money. It's about being seen, about being valued, about finally existing for myself. And yet, this is only the beginning. The match has been struck, the ledger opened, and the balance within our family is about to shift in ways I can't yet measure. Over the years, the pattern hardened like cement. Every birthday, every holiday, every Sunday dinner became another test. How much could I give, and how little would it matter? Claire's breezy voice on the phone always carried that hidden weight. Naomi, can you manage the dessert table? Something gorgeous but budget-friendly. No nuts, no sugar, and nothing that clashes with the decor. I'd smile, agree, and add the invisible cost to my mental ledger. On quiet mornings, Stephen would look at me over his coffee and say, "You don't have to do everything." But in my family, don't have to wasn't advice. It was a challenge. Say no and you're difficult. Say yes and you disappear. Each favor disguised as kindness, each compliment hiding a cut, pressed heavier and heavier on my chest. I still remember one summer barbecue. Claire had filled her backyard with friends I barely knew. I had promised Oliver a trip to the aquarium that same day. His small, sticky hand clutched mine as I explained we couldn't stay long. Then Mom texted, "Family comes first," for 3 long days. The silence that followed was colder than any argument. Then, finally, a short follow-up. "We forgive you. Just give us a little more notice next time," they said. The tiny scrapes turned into deeper ones, and I shifted from forgiving to precise. Every loan dollar, every favor, every overtime hour, I tracked it all. My phone became a quiet ledger of unseen debts. The $250 I fronted for a party no one ever paid back. The $412.79 I spent on ingredients for New Year's Eve 4 years ago. The hours I gave away, never to reclaim. And it wasn't only about money. It was my focus, my time, my emotional effort. Claire would call again and again, pushing limits without ever naming them. "Naomi, can you handle the appetizers? Oh, and make them gluten-free. My client's very particular." Her laugh, light and dismissive, always carried a quiet permission to serve, to obey, to stretch myself thinner. Through it all, Stephen was my calm in the storm. When I came home drained, he'd greet me with tea and a soft smile. "You've done enough today," he'd say. Enough. A word my family barely acknowledged existed. Yet even his kindness couldn't stop the slow depletion of my energy, the steady grind of endless demands, the veiled insults wrapped in compliments. Then came the texts, never-ending reminders of family needs. "Can you bring a salad for Aunt Leia's birthday? We'd love for you to cater a small dinner, Naomi. You're so talented." Each request sounded harmless, but beneath the praise hid an expectation, work without gratitude, gifts without recognition, time without regard. I began to feel the rhythm of it deep in my body. The small favors were never small. They were crumbs leading toward a feast I was never invited to enjoy, only prepare. And for the first time, I felt something smoldering inside me that no practice smile could smother. Then Rachel appeared, Stephen's ex. I hadn't expected her, yet her brief presence made me suddenly aware of how easily my life with him could be dissected, measured, and compared. She wasn't a threat, not truly, but in my carefully curated world, she became a reflection, one that revealed my insecurities. Am I enough? Am I seen? Do I have ownership over my own life? The tension grew quietly, simmering like water before it boils. I realized I was carrying too much. Still, I kept showing up, smiling, chopping, measuring, baking, building. Each act a reminder that love and duty aren't the same. My family thrived on my compliance, on the quiet, unpaid labor I kept giving without protest. By the end of that chapter, I understood 2 truths. Those tiny cuts accumulated, each one layering frustration, hurt, and betrayal. And a reckoning was inevitable. I didn't know what form it would take, or if they'd ever see it coming. What I did know was that the ledger, the record of unacknowledged effort, unpaid time, and unseen care, was no longer hidden from me. The little asks were stacking up like a tower destined to collapse under its own weight. And in that silent realization, a seed of clarity began to grow. I started picturing a life where my effort, my energy, my time, my children, and my limits were respected, not treated as favors, but as rights. It happened on a quiet Tuesday night. Oliver was at his mother's for a sleepover, and Stephen had gone out to get groceries. I sat alone at our kitchen table, bills piled to one side, my laptop open to an empty spreadsheet, a container of cold roast chicken in front of me. For hours, I calculated. Ingredients I'd bought, hours spent cooking, babysitters I'd hired so I could prepare, gas money for countless family gatherings. When I finally looked at the total, $4,086, I leaned back and exhaled slowly. That number wasn't just about money. It was a record of years of quiet extraction, favors disguised as opportunities, humiliation wrapped in family affection. For once, I didn't minimize it. I didn't excuse it. I saw everything clearly. And with that clarity came something I hadn't felt in years: control. The ledger didn't fuel anger. It gave me steadiness, strength. I titled the spreadsheet Boundaries. From that moment on, I wouldn't fund family events. I wouldn't work without compensation. Oliver would always come first. No would be a full sentence. It wasn't dramatic, just clarity, bright and sharp, like sunlight after a long winter. I didn't send the spreadsheet right away. Families cling, tugging and twisting when you try to pull free. But I knew that next New Year's Eve, the next birthday, the next polite request, I wouldn't fold so easily. The escalation began small. A group chat message that read light, but landed heavy. We'd love for you to take care of the turkey for Thanksgiving. Just a small thing. How many guests? I asked. Oh, just a few, they said, which in family language meant 30. What's the budget? Silence. Finally, my mother replied, don't be crass. Crass? No adult. I understood the difference now, and I was ready to stand by it. The little cuts had multiplied over the years. Naomi, could you move your car? Our guests have nicer ones. Naomi, don't use the good knives. Naomi, can you make something more sophisticated this time? I had become their invisible invoice, unpaid but ever present, holding up every gathering, every celebration, every photo Claire wanted to post online. It was time to make that cost visible. I drafted a formal invoice, clear, precise, professional. Labor, 8 hours per event at $45 an hour. Ingredients, $3,550 per gathering. Total, $4,186. No emotion, no drama, just facts, just boundaries, a line that would never be crossed again. I knew what would come next, the calls, the messages, the attempts to guilt, to twist, to reminisce. But the ledger wasn't for them. It was for me, proof that my time, my labor, my energy, and my very presence carried worth. The first real test, I knew, would arrive on New Year's Eve. The group chat lit up before noon. This year, we're hosting at Claire's, my mother typed. No space for you or Oliver. Just drop the kids off with a sitter and come help with dinner like always, Claire added casually. Dad chimed in, don't guilt us, we still want our presents. I stared at the screen, throat tightening the way it does when dough comes out underbaked, pale, unfinished, and still expected to serve. I packed Oliver's overnight bag for his mom's place, slipping in little favors for a pretend countdown at 5 p.m. in our living room. He laughed, blowing on paper horns, shouting with me, 10, 9, 8? Then I headed to Claire's loft, tote in hand, knives, measuring cups, and the invoice that would change everything. When the elevator doors opened, I was hit with laughter, perfume, and the heavy warmth of an oven used badly. Claire floated over with her signature air kiss. You made it. The kitchen's a mess. I met her tone evenly. I'm here as a guest. She laughed lightly. You're hilarious. Mom's in the living room. Mom looked at me like a delayed delivery. Dad barely glanced up from his phone. Business as usual. I set the invoice on the counter, voice measured and clear. You said there wasn't room for my son, but somehow there's room for my labor. That's not how my life works. The laughter died. Aunt Leah hovered nearby, diplomatic and unsure, but I stayed composed. This wasn't vengeance, it was closure. For once, the ledger wasn't invisible. And for the first time, neither was I. The moment that paper touched the counter, the air changed, thick, still, like music cut mid-song. Claire's smile faltered, her brows rising. Is this supposed to be a joke? No, I said steady. It's a boundary. Mom's lips pressed tight. Don't embarrass us, she whispered, almost begging. I held her gaze. You said there was no room for Oliver, but there was for my labor. That's not how my life works. Dad scoffed, trying to sound dismissive. It's just one night. It's been years, I said. Years of invisible effort, of constant favors that were really obligations. This invoice isn't revenge, it's a record. It's about respect. Claire stepped closer, voice low. You're ruining my night. I looked around, the half-prepped food, the sputtering oven, the kitchen that had been mine to run for years, and realization settled in. This wasn't about food or dinner. It was about me, my time, my boundaries, my children. Your night's built on someone you don't respect, I said quietly, firmly. I'm not cooking for free. I'm here as a guest for 1 hour. If you want a caterer, here's my rate. Silence fell like a curtain. Aunt Leah lingered, visibly uncomfortable. Mom's voice quivered. We're family. Exactly, I said evenly. That's why I'm saying this calmly. I won't bankroll family gatherings anymore. My kids come first. No is a full sentence. Claire's face tightened. You always make it about money. No, I said, unwavering. You make it about my time, my work, my labor. I'm making it about respect. Mom's jaw clenched. Dad leaned back, tone cold. If you leave, don't come back. That's a boundary too, I replied, slipping on my coat. I laid the invoice flat, neat rows of dates, hours, numbers, like a peace offering that spoke louder than words. As I reached for the door, Mom said sharply, we still expect our gifts. I paused, hand on the handle, then turned back. You're getting one, I said. It's me, finally being honest with myself. The elevator door slid shut. In the mirrored steel, my reflection stared back, exhausted, yes, but intact. For the first time in years, an invisible weight eased off my shoulders. Midnight arrived. Strangers shouted and fireworks painted the sky. I sat curled on the couch with a bowl of reheated soup, texting Oliver and Stephen. Happy New Year. By morning, the first day of the year brought 23 missed calls, 41 unread messages. Mom, Dad, Claire, all pleading, bargaining, twisting words to pull me back. I ignored them and turned inward instead. That afternoon, Oliver and I made pancakes inside our little blanket fort. Joy replaced duty. Presence replaced performance. The days that followed came with waves of guilt trips, sentimental messages, emotional ambushes. I stayed unmoved. Eventually, their tone shifted from fury to persuasion, then to fragile attempts at peace. Mom texted, I miss the kids. Can we see them Saturday? No cooking, just visiting. I replied, we'll come. Pizza, board games, 2 hours. Oliver cracked a joke about broccoli that made Dad, who had tagged along, actually laugh. For 15 fleeting minutes, tension melted into laughter. Checks trickled in next, partial amounts, apology notes, and finally the full payment. Not victory, not revenge, just balance. My work recognized, my limits respected. My family hadn't changed much, but the rules had. That was the day I understood what it meant to live by my own terms, to say no without guilt, to claim my worth, my time, and my love on my own clock. I learned that love doesn't require erasing yourself. Respect does. After the storm, the silence felt different, not empty, but vast. The constant pull of duty, the invisible scorekeeping I'd carried for years, it was gone. The calls didn't stop right away, but I answered when I chose to. I started doing little things I'd forgotten. Sitting through Oliver's parent-teacher conference and actually listening. instead of planning my next family task. Teaching him to crack an egg one-handed, both of us laughing when pieces of shell plopped into the bowl, until he finally nailed it and hooped like he'd scored a goal. Stephen joined me in the kitchen, apron tied, and for a moment we were just us, a family, not a responsibility chart. I brought back rituals I'd shelved for years. Morning jogs by the river, slow stretches, dinners that didn't need to impress anyone, just food that felt like comfort. The old ledger of effort and expectation became a warning sign, a reminder to guard my energy, my children, and my peace. Mom, Dad, and Claire kept trying to edge back in, but the boundaries had changed. Their calls grew cautious, gentle, probing. What time's the recital? Want the kids Saturday? I answered evenly without apology. Oliver adapted too. Boundaries are like oven mitts, he said one morning, repeating something I'd once told him. He got it. Saying no didn't cancel love, it protected it. Family gatherings stopped being automatic obligations. When I went, it was as a guest. I brought store-bought muffins to brunch. Claire, leaning by the window with her Bloody Mary, said, "You've changed." "Not really," I said. "I just stopped paying tuition for the same lesson." She rolled her eyes. "You think you're better than us?" "I think I'm better to myself," I answered. She didn't like it, but she didn't hand me a knife to start chopping either. The messages still came now and then, but lighter, ordinary questions, coordination, no guilt, no pressure. Each night, after Oliver was tucked in and Stephen beside me, I sat at the same table where I once tallied emotional debts, now planning menus, grocery lists, and our lives with purpose, not pressure. My new list was simple. Routines, school drop-offs, workouts, Oliver's milestones, quiet moments, time with Stephen. Boundaries, yes, but also joy. Some nights, I thought about that cramped loft kitchen. Claire's disappointed eyes, Mom's clipped tone, Dad's passive-aggressive sighs. I didn't feel triumph. I just remembered, and that memory steadied me. People say kitchens are about fire. They are. But they're also about timing, knowing when to stir, when to wait, and when to lift the pan from the flame. I'd finally learned that, with my family, my children, and myself, life didn't erupt. It settled. It aligned. My name is Naomi Russell. I'm 34, an architect, a fiercely protective mother, and a partner to a man who stands beside me. I know my worth. I know my limits. I know my love. Claire still posts perfection. Mom still offers advice. Dad still mans the grill. But now they ask what works for me.